I'm here to give you an introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. First, a general introduction. The Bhagavad Gita is ascribed to Veda Vyasa, also known as Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa. And it is found in the middle of the Mahabharata. Now the Mahabharata is one of the large epics of India, several times as large as the Odyssey and the Iliad put together. In the middle of the Mahabharata is the Bhishma Parva, and from verse 830 onwards, these 700 verses constitute the Bhagavad Gita. So though it's part of the epic, it is also possible to remove those 700 verses and the text can stand by itself. They say if you read the Mahabharata, it helps you to understand the Gita better. Now let's look at the name, Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Srimad means abundant, gracious and beautiful, or filled with abundance and grace and beauty. Bhagavat, of course, means the Lord, and Gita is a song. So it is a song of the Lord, song by the Lord, and song for the Lord. Because in the Advaita tradition, the person reading it is not separate from the Absolute. So in that sense, the song by the Absolute, for the Absolute, and of the Absolute. It's about the Absolute. Gita is a song, but in this context, it's not to be taken like a melodious song, but as something which elevates your mind when you read it. If a person has any kind of affliction or vishada, as the Gita starts with vishada, reading the Gita brings in an elevation of one's mind. So in that sense, it is a song. Gita, the song, is also thought of as in Plato, who says the hymn of dialectics. There's no real hymn there, but it just means that it's a text which elevates one's mind. So Srimad Bhagavad Gita. These 700 verses, they are again arranged in a arch fashion. This is a structure of the Gita. If you look at all the verses, they are not haphazardly put together, but they have this kind of an arch structure. And if this was an arch made of bricks, there is a horizontal brick here and a horizontal brick there, and right in the middle you have the vertical brick. So similarly, the teachings too, they proceed from the battlefield to the most sublime when you come to the 9th chapter, and then once again they start becoming more to do with matters of the world till we come to the 18th chapter. So that is basically this structure. Now when you are studying the Gita, it will be good to remember that there is this constant movement upwards to the 9th and then a descent from the 9th. So you will see that each chapter is related to the earlier chapter as the teaching gets more and more sublime. So this, you may say, is the theoretical side and that is the practical side. This is about principles and that is the practice. So what are the chapters? It starts with Arjuna Vishada Yoga, then you have Sankhya Yoga, then you have Karma Yoga, then you have Jnana Yoga, then you have Karma Sannyasa Yoga, then you have Dhyana Yoga, then you have Jnana Vijnana Yoga, then you have Akshar Brahma Yoga, and then you have Rajvidya, Rajaguhya Yoga. The 34th verse of the 9th chapter is Manmana Bhava Madbhakto. Become one with me. And that same verse is repeated as the 65th verse in the 18th chapter. So that would be considered as the central teaching of the Gita. So we have the ascending dialectic, as it's known as, and then when you cross over to the 10th, that is Vibhuti Yoga, 11th is Vishwarupa Darshana, 12th is Bhakti, 13th is the analytical, that is Kshetra Kshetra Vibhaga Yoga, 14th is Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga, also analytical, 15th is Purushottama Yoga, where all the dualities that were implicit in the earlier teachings are resolved in the Supreme Purusha, Purushottama. 16 is Daivasuri Sampatti Vibhaga Yoga, also analysis. Shraddhatraya Vibhaga Yoga, also analysis. And the final summing up in Sannyasa Yoga. So these are the 18 chapters. So as we have said, this central teaching, which is like the golden leaf placed in the middle, Manmanabhava Madbhakto Madhyajimam Namaskuru. So when we study further, we can see that they are divided into a vertical and a horizontal. Now this horizontal has a plus side and a minus side. So plus side, here we can put Jagat. And here we can put minus side, Jiva. So this is the psychological, this is the cosmological. We as individuals, when we look in our inner self, we are the Jiva. And what are we confronting? We are confronting the cosmos. And if you listen to modern cosmologists, it's like 14 billion light years across. That's huge. So that huge cosmos is then viewed by our little eye, and then we go into an inner world of concepts which can also be extremely vast. And what is this vertical line? This is Ishvara. So both the Jiva and the Jagat are manifesting out of Ishvara. And Ishvara is from the Sanskrit root it, which means to control. So it's the inner principle of control. If you see an atom, there is nucleus and then there are the electrons. There is no control from outside. It has an inner structure, an inner control. So Ishvara is that inner control. Ishvara is manifesting outside as Jagat and inside as Jiva. Let's have some definitions now. So Ishvara can be defined as Sat, Chit and Ananda. Supposing I look at this book. This book has an irrefutable existence, Satyam. So that is the Sat aspect of it. I know it is a book. The knowledge that it is a book is the Chit aspect. And it is the Bhagavad Gita, so it has a certain value in my mind. That is the Ananda aspect. So everything we have in this world are based on Sat, Chit and Ananda. So there is an overall Sat to which all existence belongs. There is an overall Chit to which all knowledge belongs. And there is an overall Ananda to which all values belong. When we come to the Jiva is made of Chit and Jada. That means inertia and consciousness. And we as human beings, we are always oscillating between consciousness and inertia. When our consciousness becomes bright, we are filled with knowledge. When our consciousness gets into inertia, then you become dull. So Chit and Jada is the nature of Jiva. What about Jagat? Jagat itself means that which is coming into being and constantly changing. So Jagat is Jada and Prakriti. That is the nature of Jagat. So in the Prakriti we have Prakhya, Pravritti and Sthiti. So those three functions. Or Prakarshena Karotiti Prakriti. It's always replicating, it's multiplying, it's increasing. That is the nature of Prakriti. These principles, if we apply to the main characters of the Bhagavad Gita, and who are the main characters of the Bhagavad Gita? There is Arjuna and then there is Krishna. Arjuna comes from the word Arjavam, which means straightforward, bright and alert. And Krishna, he is the Guru, he is the light. And we have another character with which the Bhagavad Gita starts, and that is Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra is the blind king. So if we make eyes, we can say on the side of Jagat, there is a closed eye. This is an alert eye. that represents Arjuna in us. The alertness in us, that is the Arjuna. The dullness, the blindness, the prejudice in people, that represents the Dhritarashtra. And there is another eye in the middle, that is a peculiar eye. It not only sees, but it's like a lamp, it also shows. And that is the eye of Krishna. So Krishna represents, or Ishvara has that ability to show as well as to see. Our physical eye can only see, and the blind eye of Dhritarashtra, that is totally opaque, it cannot see. So in that sense, you can see that we have in us also the consciousness of the divine, we have the consciousness of Arjuna, and we have the blindness of Dhritarashtra. You have to see the symbolism involved. Dhritarashtra, Rashtra is a nation. Dhrita means to support. So he's a supporter of the nation, he's the king. And he's blind. It's a spiritual blindness that is to be thought of, not necessarily a physical blindness. First verse, he says, Mamakaha Pandavas Chaiva Kimu Kurvata Sandhya. He has that feeling of my people and the Pandavas. Being a king, he should not have had that feeling of my people and the others. So that shows his blindness. And if we read the Mahabharata, you know he's a wavering person all the time. He cannot make up his mind. And he favors his own son, even though he knows that he's doing the wrong. So all these characteristics reflect the blindness of Dhritarashtra. So it's not necessarily a physical thing. It's a symbol that shows his nature of being a blind person. So as we said, Arjuna is Arjavam, from straightforwardness. And Duryodhana is that difficult. So all the Dus are the bad guys. And the Pandavas are the good people. So there is a symbolism involved, which is an interesting study really, if you can decipher the symbols in the Mahabharata. Because when they wrote the myth, they didn't write it as history, as literal, but it had a symbolic level also. So Dhritarashtra is to be taken in a symbolic way, as the blindness which is present in people, which prevents them from seeing things in their true form or true light. Now, the story begins with Dhritarashtra, and also it goes to the Vishada of Arjuna. There is another text called the Yoga Vashishta Ramayana, in which there is the Vishada of Sri Rama, and Vashishta is the teacher who teaches Rama and gets him out of Vishada. Here the medicine is wisdom. The therapy given is wisdom or knowledge. Knowledge is used to bring about correction and to bring about the improvement in a person's life. Now, vish means poison. Ad means to swallow, to eat. Vishada. So this is like somebody has been poisoned. So it's a state of mind which is very disturbed and agitated, despondent. And from that state, which is the first chapter, right to the 18th chapter, Arjuna says, Nashto moha smriti labdhva. That means my delusion is gone and I am ready to fight. Fight here meaning that he is doing his duty as a warrior. So the message there is to perform one's duty with efficiency. How it is done is taught in the Karma Yoga and the Jnana Yoga and Karma Sannyasa Yoga. Gita revalues yajna. Whatever you do is your yajna. Do your work as a dedication. Do your work as a yajna. Do it as an offering to the Lord. If you are a teacher, then when you teach, then think that that is your offering to God. When you cook, you think you're cooking as an offering to God. So that's the beauty of the Gita. It doesn't make a bifurcation between your spiritual life and your worldly life. It's not that, okay, now I'm in my worldly life, okay, I put it aside, now I'm going to my spiritual life. It's not like that. Your whole of life is to be focused in a master stream and led towards the Lord. Every little thing that you do is to be directed towards the Lord. That's why it's taught on the battlefield. Arjuna wants to become a sannyasi. In the second chapter, he says, I don't want to fight. But Krishna scolds him. He said, you are behaving like an impotent fellow. And he says, you should do your duty. So this is a great ability to link your activity with your spiritual life. It takes 3 chapters for them to resolve the karma issue. Karma yoga, jnana yoga and karma sannyasa yoga. After that has been resolved, then you go into dhyana yoga. After dhyana yoga, you come to the more subtle ones like jnana vijnana, akshara brahma. So you can see the ascending going on. If you're still caught in the world of karma, then you can't grasp the subtler teachings. So you're supposed to transform the quality of your actions, becoming contemplative in your actions. The cancelling of means and ends, that is the secret. When you say methodology, then you say yoga mimamsa is the yoga mentioned in the Gita. The yoga in the Gita is not the Patanjali yoga. It is a wider yoga in which the counterparts are first recognized and then ends and means are to be unified. An example is an artist painting or a child playing. The enjoyment and the act go together. There is no future reward. In the very act itself, you have the reward. That's the example of yogic action, where ends and means are united. Yoga mimamsa. Okay, if you take a teacher and student situation, that means both of them make the situation. It's the 2 counterparts that are responsible for the situation. So you take both into account and then work with both. That is yoga mimamsa. Apicha, and this and that. You don't say this or that, but you take this and that, and then find the unitive principle in that. That means ends and means are united. You don't do something and then wait for a reward at the end of it. So if we do actions that we enjoy doing, that becomes yoga naturally. And how do we find that? That is through swadharma. And how do we find our swadharma? The analytical chapters, like chapter on Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga, Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga, Daivasuri Sampatti Vibhaga Yoga, those chapters are analytical, which help us to discover our own potentials and our true calling. And by doing swadharma, we are able to harmonize our life with the cosmic life. Now, when we come to this horizontal and vertical movement, this is a common scheme in all scriptures, where our consciousness has a tendency to move in these 2 planes. When we are in the world of transaction, that is a horizontal movement, and when we are in contemplation, that is a vertical movement. And the yogi tries to balance these 2 tendencies, and that brings about the harmonization. Now we talk of another aspect of the study, that is, who is the competent student and what is the subject matter. There we think of the adhikari, the competent student. If you take the Bhagavad Gita to Ramana Maharishi or to Ramakrishna Paramhansa, they have no need for the Gita because they are already liberated. If you take the Gita to somebody who is immersed in the world of action and is full of passion, they are not interested in the Gita. But if there is somebody who is thirsting for the truth, who wants to know the truth, such a person will find the Gita as an elixir of immortality and truth. Tattva jnana. That means knowledge of that-ness, tat, knowledge of tvam, thisness, or the individual, and that is truth. In the West you say philosophy, lover of, or the person who likes truth. But in the East you say a knower of truth. So it's an experience, and the revealed texts are expressions of that truth, the Shrutis. So the Upanishads are in that category. In Shankara's analogies, he speaks of a deer that is caught in a forest fire, or a fish that is caught in a pool when the water is drying up. And Ramakrishna Paramhansa speaks about ducking somebody's head under the water. So that kind of agitation, that kind of longing to get out, to seek mumukshutva, the search for liberation, is one of the prerequisites for anybody on this path. Then we talk of the Vishaya, that means the epistemology or the subject matter. At the end of each chapter, there is a colophon which says, Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su Upanishadsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Arjuna Vishada Yogo Nama Prathamo Adhyaya. There you see the Vishaya, the subject, which is Brahma Vidya and Yoga Shastra. Brahman is everything. Everything is to be included in Brahman. There is an Upanishad called the Mandukya Upanishad, which has an equation. It says, Sarvam hi etad Brahma, I am Atma Brahma, so I am Atma Chatushpat. So everything is Brahman. Myself, my Atman is Brahman. And this self has Chatushpat, 4 parts. And what are these 4 parts? These 4 parts are the wakeful consciousness, Jagrat, the dream consciousness, Swapna, the deep sleep consciousness, Shushupti, and the 4th, Turiyam. Pure silence, that is the 4th. We cannot say anything about it. Now, whatever experience we have, it's either in the waking world of transaction, it is in the subjective world of dream, it's in the causal world of Sushupti, or it's in the transcendental world. Nothing we experience can happen outside these 4 states of consciousness. So in that sense, everything is Om. Nothing can be outside Om. And Om is the syllable that represents Brahman. Therefore, the study of Brahman or Brahma Vidya means we study everything that is to deal with the wakeful world, we study everything that has to do with the dream world, we study everything that has to do with the unconscious, and we study everything that has to do with the transcendental. So that is why it is called the science of sciences. It's an all-inclusive subject. And the second thing they talk about is Yoga Shastra. Yoga in the Gita is, as we said, different from the Patanjali Yoga. It's a Yoga Mimamsa. That is a unitive thinking with critical thinking also. We learn to unify pairs of opposites. First identify dialectical pairs of opposites, then unify them. So that is the Yoga Mimamsa of the Gita. The Sankhya Yoga of the Gita is not the Sankhya of Kapila. It means rational thinking, the way of reasoning. So in that way, the Gita has a very special methodology of its very own, which is very unique and which treats each chapter as its own yoga, its own darshan, and yet they all fit together. That was about the Vishaya, the subject. And then we come to methodology, that is Samvada. Samvada means a dialogue. Here Krishna and Arjuna are the 2 counterparts. And Krishna represents the super consciousness, supreme consciousness. Arjuna represents the individual consciousness. So you can see the interplay between the individual and the supreme, the transcendent. So that is the dialogue that's going on in the book. They are symbolic representations. Though Krishna says I and me, it's always to be taken as a representative of Brahman. He is talking as if Brahman is present. And Arjuna is talking as an ordinary human being who has all the time, space, causation, Nama, Rupa, Kala, Desha, all these various limitations. So his vision is always through the limited eyes. Both of them had relatives on the battlefield. Arjuna had relatives, Krishna had relatives. Krishna is smiling, Arjuna is crying, because Krishna sees the cosmic and Arjuna sees only his limited, small space. So that is another thing you have to remember, that it's the samvada, the dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna, through which this teaching is given. And then comes the prayojana of what use, what benefit is there by studying the Gita. The benefit is self-realization or liberation, so that we realize our true nature, and that realization brings about release from various kinds of bondages. The self-realization, it means making each moment real. Time comes to us moment by moment, and we fill it with meaning, and it becomes real. And we let it go by, and it's dead, it's gone. So being able to constantly make each second of your life meaningful That's one way of talking about self-realization. That is the central teaching of the Gita, how to become a self-realized person. There are several models given, like the Brahmi Sthiti, Yoga Rudha, Gunatita, to explain the different kinds of people who have this characteristic of having transcended three gunas, or attained to yoga, or attained a steady mind. All of these characteristics which are found in people with sthita prajna, for instance, one of steady intelligence. If we take one step further about what is the game in our consciousness that is going on, when we participate in this world, there is the upsurge of consciousness from the alpha. It participates in the world and it is absorbed into the omega. This is happening from the subjective and the objective side. So when you feel the urge to do something, it's arising from the alpha. It plays itself out into the world and then it is absorbed into the omega. So here you can say I do, or karma shakti. Here you can say I will, or ichha shakti. Here you can say I am, or jnana shakti. And here it is the enjoyment. This is the constant movement of consciousness from our unconscious, moving upward and manifesting in the world and then getting resolved. So where does the yogi place himself or herself? The yogi places himself by absorbing everything into the basic I consciousness. It's the central position that the yogi places himself or herself. So the whole Gita's basic idea is to become a yogi, to lead life as a yogi, and also to have knowledge of the absolute, Brahma Vidya. The Gita falls in the Prasthanatrayi, that means the canonical books of wisdom coming from the Upanishads to the Brahma Sutras and down to the Bhagavad Gita. So you may say that the Bhagavad Gita is a gateway to the Upanishads. If you study the Gita, it gives you an entry into study of the Upanishads. In the Upanishads, we have knowledge of Brahman directly. You don't have a Krishna or Arjuna there. You might have the principles taught to you directly. So it's a bipolar situation where you have parasparyam. The student has bhakti, the student has shraddha. It is only through shraddha that the student is able to understand. And from the other side, the side of Lord or the teacher, there is karunya and there is kripa. That is grace and compassion from the side of the teacher. So that keeps the flow of knowledge going. So that is also found in the Gita. In the early chapters you see Arjuna as a carping person. He's doubting, he's arguing. And it's only after about 6 chapters that he finally comes around. And after the Vishwarupa Darshana, he becomes a full devotee. Among the analytical chapters, you have the Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga, where you have the 3 gunas, which are again diagnostic. By observing our choices, we will be able to know which of the gunas are present. But we are not supposed to cultivate any guna according to the Gita. We are supposed to transcend all the 3 gunas. Gunatita. So in conclusion, this Bhagavad Gita belongs to the wisdom texts and is one of the basic texts for anybody who is interested in Upanishadic wisdom or the path of knowledge, and apply those teachings in our lives at appropriate times, and then you will really benefit from the study of the Gita. So it's a living text, it's to be practiced as a guidebook. It's no use keeping it as a holy book and doing puja on it, that won't help. It's by reading it and understanding and applying. So Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasana, that principle operates.